All right, so Donna will be directing your questions in the chat to Anna and I, and we will be asking them out loud. But do we feel like we should start now?
Yeah, I think we're good to start.
All right, so why don't we start with our introductions? Does anybody want to start? All right, I'm gonna call on someone. Are we okay with using first names? Okay. Sarah, would you like to start?
Yeah, no problem. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm Sarah Kayo. I graduated from University of Maryland in 2020, and I'm 2 years out of college now. My major was environmental science and policy, and during undergrad, I interned with World Resources Institute, Department of Energy, a USDA program, and the Center for Global Sustainability, as well as UMD's Office of Sustainability. And right after undergrad, I started working at a consulting firm called Apt Associates as a research assistant. And now I'm working at ICF as an international environment specialist. I don't know who wants to go next.
Let's do popcorn style. So why don't you call on someone?
Okay, I see Candela's on, so you can go next.
I'm Candela Serpa, she, her. I also graduated in May 2020 from ENSP with a concentration in policy and politics. And since graduating from UMD, I've been working as a GIS specialist and data analyst at the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, which is a nonprofit down in Durham, North Carolina, that does justice system reform work, voting rights, and environmental justice. And while I was in UMD, I did a bunch of internships with the National Park Service, NOAA, the EPA's Office of the Chesapeake Bay Program in Annapolis, a research group in UMD around environmental indicators, and the Environmental Law Institute in DC, and I feel like I'm forgetting. Oh, and USAID down in El Salvador. So I was running around all over during my time in undergrad, but I'm excited to be back and to get to talk with y'all about careers. And I'll pass it to the other Sarah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Ramonick. Thanks, Candela. So I graduated from AGNR in May 2020, and I studied environmental science and policy with a concentration in economics and a minor in global poverty. When I was in college, I actually had the internship that Candela had one summer. I had it the following summer with the EPA's Bay Program office in Annapolis. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I also did a smaller internship with a grad student during the year on forestry studies and talking about BMPs on forested land. So that was pretty awesome. And then after I graduated from UMD, I did the Chesapeake Conservation Corps for about 9 or 10 months. And I was placed with the Chesapeake Conservancy, and I focused on land conservation there. And now I work as the policy manager for Eastern Shore Land Conservancy in Easton, Maryland. And I do a lot of advocating work. The Maryland General Assembly just wrapped up 2 days ago. So it's been a whirlwind. But I see some familiar faces. Hi, Curtis. I wanted to say hi. And I'll pass it to Curtis, actually.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Just first off, just want to say how grateful I am to be a part of the conversation tonight. And so my name is Curtis Bennett. I am currently the Director of Equity and Community Engagement at the National Aquarium in Baltimore, Maryland, where I have been in that role, well, been in the organization for it'll be 8 years in August. And in the current role, for about 3 years. And so when I was in College Park, my major was environmental science and policy with a concentration in wildlife ecology and management. During that time, I also participated in the Gemstone program, that 4-year multidisciplinary research program on campus. And, you know, from an internship perspective, did some work with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, so environmental education focused, also doing work with bird of prey banding as well. And then after graduating University of Maryland, decided to pursue a master's degree from University of Delaware, where I studied river otters in New Jersey. And so I have a master's in wildlife conservation as well. And like I said, it's been great to come back home to Maryland and be at the aquarium, which certainly I remember going to as a kid. And another quick thing about me is that I'm also the current vice president of the Maryland College of Agriculture and Natural Resources Alumni Network Board. So it's always great to re-engage, you know, with students on campus and, you know, ensuring that everyone has such a transformational experience, you know, while they're on campus. And with that, I will pass it over to Mara.
Thanks, Curtis. Hi, everyone. My name is Mara Duffy. I graduated University of Maryland in 2013. I was a winter grad. So I actually transferred to UMD as a junior. I did community college, did community college at first, but was very, very happy with my time at UMD and honestly wish I had all 4 years there. But while I was in undergrad, I spent a lot of time with Professor Goger, taking her water ethics policy and some of her other water related classes. I also participated in the undergrad research program where for one semester I was able to help out with a research project over at NASA Goddard that focused on Chesapeake Bay pollution, but from the perspective of the airshed. So a lot of the focus, of course, is usually on the watershed, but it was really nice to see it from a different angle and think about the air pollution and how that ultimately affects the water quality in the bay as well. So after I graduated, I worked for the Arundel Rivers Federation. So they're a small nonprofit in Edgewater, not too far from Annapolis. They have a river keeper. So I helped the river keeper with a lot of water quality monitoring. So either out on the boat or walking around wetlands, basically, getting water quality samples for that particular watershed, which I really enjoyed. And then after that, I also was in the Chesapeake Conservation Corps. So I was in the 14 class, I guess. I've talked at a couple different UMD things and I feel like I just get older every time, but all of you guys are the same age. It's crazy to me that I graduated college almost 10 years ago at this point. But yeah, anyway, so worked for Arundel Rivers Federation, did the Chesapeake Conservation Corps for a year. And then I was hired by the National Aquarium, where I actually worked with Curtis for about the past 7 years. We actually started the same week, but I recently started a new job and moved to Charlottesville, Virginia, where I am now working for the Nature Conservancy's Virginia chapter. So I work a lot on land protection and actually do some controlled fire work. I was on a burn this morning, actually, so I reek of smoke right now, but thankfully you all can't smell that through Zoom. So yeah, happy to be here. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have about careers and next steps after college. I'm not sure who else was on the panel, so I apologize that I can't immediately popcorn it to somebody, but whoever is next.
I believe you're the last one, but I'll spotlight everyone now so it's not confusing. All right, I guess we can start with the questions. So if any of the viewers have any more questions, you can leave them in the comments and either direct them to all of the speakers or to a particular one, and we'll read them to them. So the first question that we have is, how did you go about looking for a job after you graduated? So any of the speakers can pop in, whoever feels strongly about speaking or whoever's interested in answering the question, you can pop in.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'll go first. So I would say I was pretty lucky starting right after undergrad finding a job. I started looking at the end of the fall semester of my senior year. And I mean, that was before we knew COVID was going to take over. But I started looking around. I knew that there probably wasn't going to be a lot of jobs open for like new graduates, but I just wanted to see what options there were. And then in January, I applied, or I started looking at the firm I'm at now, Apt Associates. And well, that's the one I was at previously, but I started looking at Apt Associates. And eventually I saw them at the career fair just to make sure they were legit and learn more about them. And they convinced me to apply, and I applied, and luckily I was able to get it and sign the offer by April before I graduated. But I know that's not really the experience for most people. I ended up looking again for jobs starting in the summer of 2021 because I felt like there wasn't much growth at my previous firm and I wanted to check out new opportunities. So I ended up searching again. And the way I started off was actually looking up people on LinkedIn that were in positions that I wanted to be in. And I would ask them for informational interviews. And most people actually agreed. I probably did like 10 or 11 of these interviews. I was looking into ESG, I was looking into consulting. I wasn't really looking into government work. I think I was so used to consulting that I would kind of wanted to stay in that area. But anyone that was in a role that I thought was really interesting, I've mostly focused on people that were my age or recently out of undergrad as well. And then I ended up talking to someone who used to work at my old firm who is now at ICF, and ICF was somewhere I was very interested in working at. And eventually I was able to get a meeting with them and get this role. But yeah, my biggest thing is networking. That really, really helps.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that question as well. And I graduated in 2010, and the economy wasn't that great at that point. And for me, I had intentions of wanting to go to grad school, but when I graduated undergrad, because there weren't as many opportunities available, it kind of fast forwarded the grad school option to kind of do that, and so having to kind of pivot a bit into that space and then wait for the economy to settle out a little bit more. And so at that point was able to as Sarah mentioned, do a lot of networking, a lot of informational interviews, just talking to people to understand what was out there. And it's a reason why I'm so passionate about career pathways, because I didn't really feel like I knew what was available until I was in it to know, which is a problem. So being able to create a different type of access to awareness of things is really important. And so definitely met with a lot of folks. And, one story really stands out with a really good mentor of mine at US Fish and Wildlife Service. And, I kept talking to him about stuff, and he would say, Curtis, like, we keep telling you, we don't have a job, right? And I said, I know you said that, but I know people who do, because the environmental field is so small. So, and it's actually how I found out about the opportunity at the aquarium, was through a direct referral from folks I had talked to at Fish and Wildlife Service to the organization that they partner with, a lot of the aquarium. So definitely get out there and network.
Yeah, I can talk a bit about the wrong way of going about it, because networking is definitely the easiest and most productive way of getting a job that you'll actually enjoy, with people that will tell you what it's like to work at that place. but I also graduated in May 2020, which also the worst possible time to get a job. And I was actually unemployed for 4 months after graduation and was just applying every single day to jobs, which is really disheartening. So if you're able to apply early while you're still in school, that will, even if you take a break afterwards, having that secured will give you a lot of peace of mind. But what I did was search for organizations in places I wanted to move to that were related to the environment, and also looking for keywords with skills that I have and trying to get jobs there. So the job that I have right now isn't directly related to the environment, even though now we've started to do environmental justice work. But because I did a minor in GIS at UMD and did internships and projects with GIS, I was able to get a job where you do GIS, and that is my main role. And searching for places I wanted to move to and positions that related to that was the most helpful thing I did, and ended up having to apply to like 70 positions and did a lot of interviews, got to a lot of final rounds only to get rejected. So if you're able to get a contact inside, either from doing an internship there over the summer in an area you want to work in, or contacting your previous coordinators and mentors to get you contacts, would be the best way to go. But you can also get a job if you go about it the wrong way.
Yeah, so my first job position actually came about because at the time, like when I'm guessing this is still the case, but at the time when I was in undergrad, we were required to do at least one internship before we graduated. So the internship that I did while I was in undergrad was unpaid at the time, which I was not thrilled about. I separate ran. I actually had to quit my paid job to take on this unpaid internship that I had to do to graduate. However, it did pan out long term because once I did graduate, I got a job offer from that place where I did the internship. So short-term pain, long-term gain, I feel is often, unfortunately, kind of the case in the environmental field. I can only really speak to my own experience. I've pretty much exclusively worked for nonprofits. And so the best way to get your foot in the door at nonprofits would be either to volunteer with them, whether that's just a one-off thing. So for example, a lot of nonprofits will have things like a tree planting or a trash cleanup, some sort of special event. Even just going to a one-off thing like that and talking to folks and having them put a face to your name, and also they can see like, oh, this person was willing to come to this event, put in work for the day, goes a long way when it comes to nonprofit environmental work, if that's what you're interested in. So that's another way that you can kind of go about networking without it being the more like traditional reaching out to folks on LinkedIn, though that is of course super helpful as well.
All right. If anybody else wants to say anything before we move on to the next question. Okay, cool. It was asked for Sarah if you could talk more on what you did in the Conservation Corps for just a bit.
Yeah, sure. So again, I graduated in May 2020 and I applied for the Corps program the day before we went home for spring break and then never came back to UMD. So that is, I had my eggs all in one basket essentially at that point. And I was a little nervous, but it's kind of a long process to be assigned to a host through the Corps. It's like a weird matching thing and you interview them and you have to be bold. And my first person that I talked to told me to be very bold in those interviews. So always be bold. But that was a long process. And I found out in June that I got my #1 host site and I was super excited about that. And again, I had been nervous about the whole process, but I had one interview with, you get a mentor, and my mentor was awesome. He was a former Department of Natural Resources secretary twice. And I knew he was well connected going into my position. And I was right on that. He knows pretty much everybody, but that finding a mentor is very important if you are able to. And networking, again, is very important. But during my position at the Corps, I touched on some policy work, which I wasn't exactly expecting to, but it really turned out because now that's what I do every day and I really enjoy it. I did some grant funding projects. I made a video for the EPA to get some grant funding. That was pretty cool. I handled a lot of day-to-day work with agendas and meeting planning and invitations for our annual conference. And it was pretty hard. It was a challenging position in a lot of ways, but I'm very grateful. And the one thing I have to say about the Conservation Corps, again, I wasn't super psyched going into it, but I didn't think I was going to be there for an entire year. It was a really great stepping stone to honestly give me some confidence during that chapter in my life and to meet some great people in the environmental field and move on from there. So it's a cool program. I would recommend it if it's something that you're interested in. And I'm always happy to talk about the Corps program because it had a great impact on my life.
Yeah, I totally agree. Same here. So while I was at that first job, the Rundles River Federation, the one that I got from interning in college, that then led to me applying to the Corps. So each of my jobs has kind of led to the other. So even if you start out at not your like super ideal place, like Curtis was saying, the field is so small and tight knit, like everybody kind of knows each other, that as long as you have an in sort of one place, that will help lead you to future job positions. So I applied to the Corps because where I was working had Corps members in the past. So by talking to their current Corps member, I was like, oh, like this sounds like a good program for me. The way the program works, like Sarah was saying, it's designed for 18 to 25-year-olds, and you're matched with a host organization. And yeah, like Sarah was saying, the match process is a bit complicated, so I won't go into too much detail with that. But so my host that I got matched with was the National Aquarium. So then while I was working there as a Corps member, that led to my job offer of getting an actual position at the aquarium. So it all worked out in the end. But yeah, after, like, while I was serving as a Corps member, the sort of main crux of the program is that you have to do a capstone project while you're a Corps member, and that can be anything. So it's a really good way, since you're required to do it, you kind of have some freedom to get more experience in something that you want your next step to be. So if you wanted that to be wildlife habitat restoration or GIS mapping or working with community members, you can kind of cater your capstone project to that, which then gives you the experience which you can put on your resume when you're applying to that next position. So I really appreciate the way the Corps program is set up, because you basically have built-in networking and professional development. Like, you have to go through a resume workshop. You have to do other professional development trainings with your fellow Corps members, but also the Chesapeake Conservation Corps program is just generally really well known in Maryland. So pretty much all environmental organizations are going to know what that means when you say that you've been a Corps member or you applied to be a Corps member. So yeah, like Sarah was saying, it's a really good first step. I was lucky enough, after a couple years of being at the aquarium, I ended up being the CCC mentor for a couple new Corps members for the past 2 years. So yeah, mentorship is definitely something that's really important to me, and helping people navigate those next steps to the jobs they want to have. It's tricky when you're going from school to real life and figuring out how all of those things work.
Great, thank you for those answers. So our next question is, how did you handle the transition from being a student that lives on campus to becoming a professional and entering that professional world? So this is open to any speakers who'd like to answer.
I think also if you have any tips for seniors.
For me, the transition wasn't particularly difficult just because my last semester I was at home, and then my new job I was at home. So I didn't have to manage like the commute or anything. If there's one thing, I think time management can be really different once you're in the professional world versus being a student. I would say the time management is different because when you're a student full time. Maybe you have a part-time job or an internship, but the biggest thing you're worried about is your classes. But you have a lot of time on your hands to work with that. So it's mainly, okay, how and when should I do this assignment? How much time should I allocate to studying for this course? When you're in the professional life, I would really hope you get something that's just 9 to 5 and not, working a lot of overtime. Someone once said it's a myth that you only work 40 hours a week, but I know it's possible for some people. But yeah, you really have to manage when and how you use your free time, because my biggest thing is when you're not working, when you finish at 5 or 6 or whatever, sometimes you're too tired to do the things that you usually want to do. On the weekends, you have to be very strategic with how you use your time, because you're not as free during the week as you used to be. So the transition, it depends on how well you use your time management. But for me, it wasn't super difficult since I work at home, and I'm hoping, you guys also get the opportunity to do some remote work. I don't know if that was a good answer, but that's how it was for me.
I think, building off of that, I think kind of ties into advice that I wish I had taken for, looking back on things is really setting up those right habits and really starting from a balance perspective. I think, there's so much pressure, some of which we put on ourselves as individuals, some of it's, very societal based, especially starting new opportunities. There's that kind of prove yourself, pressure. And sometimes that can really kind of put you off balance a bit. And I can say for myself, like I've been on a tremendous self-care journey, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, to really, understand the balance of work and life, and really wanting to really pick at that a bit. And so, and I can definitely say when I first started, transitioning from school to a workspace, like I was very much out of balance. I put a lot of pressure on myself to feel like, I had to, be this or be that and show up in this way or that way. And it is something I really noticed. So, so I think for folks coming into opportunities, I think setting up those right habits of balance, I think is really important. And also, again, I think prioritizing employers that, create the space and opportunity that center balance in a really meaningful way, because that's critical.
I also found that the social aspect was probably the hardest part of being in the professional space, because I moved away from where I had been in Maryland for the past 6 years, and I was in a completely new place where I knew absolutely no one except my coworkers, who were all like at least 15 years older than me, and we were all over Zoom. And so coming into this new space, I made it a mission to find people my age that I could hang out with outside of work, because it was at the start of the pandemic and I was losing my mind. So I would strongly recommend that you join some organization. I'm in the Sunrise Movement, which is a youth-led organization around climate. And that has really saved my social life, because it's all young people. And you could find environmental organizations if your job isn't related directly to that, like mine is, or you can just find a hobby that helps you socialize and like stimulate your brain outside of work. And I would also encourage to keep learning beyond school, because you also don't have that structure of every single semester having to take classes. So I've been taking advantage of free courses that are offered online in libraries, things that my employer pays for as professional development, really taking advantage of those opportunities, and also taking advantage of your free time with work. Like if they're giving you PTO and sick time, take those hours and like go hang out with friends from college and your new friends. Just take that time off. Don't let yourself be bullied out of doing that, because that's really important to like grow as a person beyond just a professional.
Awesome, thank you all. Many ENST or ENSP students enjoy hands-on experiences outdoors. If that was something that interested you in the field, was it easy for you to find a role that offered that?
I guess I can speak. So pretty much mostly all of my job experience up to this point has been pretty fieldwork heavy. So whether that was water quality monitoring, habitat restoration, like some urban wildlife stuff, the occasional bird banding. Yeah, I felt it was relatively easy to find field work. I would not, however, say it was easy to find full-time field work that was paid. So a lot of time with those more field focused positions, they'll only be seasonal or temporary positions, which if you're able to do that starting out, like go for it. You can really rack up a couple different like really cool experiences. But I mean, as I've gotten older, that's just not in the cards for me. I can't just up and leave and go to Hawaii for 6 months and run around with sea turtles. So yeah, you have to be kind of picky, I guess, depending on what you kind of want your life to look like and what's available to you at the time. But you can always kind of fill that void I've felt with those more one-off volunteer opportunities, if that's ever something you're missing, or something that you feel you can't get in your current job. There's so many wildlife centers or other environmental organizations that would be more than happy to have some extra help.
I want to add to that. Through the core program, there were a ton of positions that had a lot of in the field work. So if you do want to get paid for 1 year of doing that, that's a good option. I personally didn't really want to be in the field every day. And I thought some of the positions were rare that didn't have field work. So that is a good option. And also, I am not an expert on this, so I apologize if I say this wrong, but a lot of land trusts and environmental restoration organizations do monitoring annually. So that's getting outside, taking pictures, doing some drone monitoring. And so you're not at an office chair all day. You're outside on this land, making sure projects and land is being conserved the way it is meant to be under certain regulations. So that's an option that I didn't really know about in college, but that is a good way to get out in the field.
All right, thank you so much for your answers. The next few questions are kind of related to each other, but the first one is, what are your thoughts on doing a +1 or master's program? And would you do it right after graduation or after a few years of work? And the other question is, did many of you complete a graduate program, or is that a significant way to set yourself apart from other applicants in this field?
So I'm going to answer it in a couple of ways. I think, so for myself, I did decide to pursue a master's degree. Part of it was driven by the fact the program that I transferred into at Maryland had just started. So I was like the first year of the wildlife ecology and management program within ENSP. And so at the time, I also wanted to be a wildlife biologist. So, you know, there were a lot of certifications and courses that at the time Maryland didn't offer that I knew I needed to take in grad school. But one piece of advice I would give is that I think it's about understanding what you want to do in your career. So, you know, a lot of folks here have talked about the importance of talking to people who are in various stages of their careers to really understand kind of what the needs are. Because, you know, let's be real, grad school is expensive. It's expensive. You know, it's time consuming, you know, so you want to make sure that you understand the, you know, what trajectory kind of as best as you're able to figure out kind of, you know, where you want to be to understand if grad school is the right step. And if so, when is it the right step to do it? The other piece of advice I would give is think about programs that provide discounts to grad school. So sometimes it's can be good to go, go work first, and there's places, and like, for example, the aquarium has a tuition reimbursement program. So, there's a certain amount of money per semester that folks can spend to get their degrees. So, thinking about those opportunities that kind of help cut the cost of the grad school experience. So yeah, I think being able to talk to folks and understand those pathways is really, really critical. And then for me though, I will say grad school taught me a lot. It taught me more about otters than I ever want to know in my life, but it did also taught me a lot about myself. And like, it's still to date one of the hardest experiences I've gone through, because they push you, push you like really, really hard. And so, I think I learned so much about, project management. I learned about even like navigating like politics. It happens in academia. And so how to navigate certain situations. So, and, it taught me, I think, how to become a really good writer, like having, written a thesis, and it helped me improve upon presentation skills and things of that nature. So I definitely did take away a lot from that experience. In so many ways. But I will say too, it's like I said, it's not a one size fits all thing with grad school. It's really a case by case basis.
Yeah, I'm about to start my master program in the fall. I'm going to UNC and Duke, doing like a concurrent degree with both of them in urban planning and water resource management. And I'm 2 years out. When I start, we'll be 2 years out of undergrad. And these 2 years have been really helpful, one, in saving money, because grad school is no joke with the price tag, and there are really fewer opportunities for funding depending on the type of degree that you're getting. But overall, if you're doing a master's degree, it's not as easily fundable with just scholarships and fellowships. So that is something to keep in mind. But also it makes it easier to not just get accepted, but get scholarships, offers, if you have experience to back up why you're going into grad school, because the admittance office will say that you are serious about it and know why you're going. And I would say that really understanding why you're going to grad school is the main reason to do it. I am doing it because I'm pivoting a bit from what I'm currently doing, and I have zero urban planning experience, and getting a job in that field without a degree is really hard. So grad school is a way for me to get into the field. So really sitting with why you're going and what you want to get out of it is really important, because those 2 years, as you're seeing with undergrad, are going to fly by at, again, a high cost. So I would say there's no rush. There's people that are in their 40s going into master's programs. So you're also going to be with people in completely different stages in life. So you want to be prepared for the social dynamics as well, because it's going to be very different on that front too.
Yeah, I think building off that too, in addition to that personal choice element, I'm a systems thinker. So the other thing that's really happening, which is very interesting, is I think, especially considering equity and inclusion, justice-based work, there's a lot of conversations happening within, industries, thinking critically about, some of these qualifications, right? That, is grad school really needed for this position or that position? Even is undergrad really needed for this or that position, right? And thinking really differently about, how we craft positions and what are the requirements for those positions, especially tied with the pay for those positions too. So, there's been a lot more momentum in those dialogues, which I think can only mean good things down the road. And really only time will tell how those things will shift. But I think it's really, really helpful that stuff is happening. Because grad school just as a whole, the accessibility of it can certainly be a barrier, and and we have to address that, within the industry.
Yeah, I think both of you have shared really good advice. So I chose to not do grad school. And the reason why is because the type of work that I enjoy doing, I don't feel having a master's gave you any sort of leg up with that. And also did not increase your pay at all. So for example, I have several friends that are park rangers or even head park rangers with master's degrees, and they have so much debt and they don't know how they're ever going to make it back. So I guess my word of caution would be just to really think about, will I make that money back if I do get a graduate degree? And like we were saying, like have that sort of endpoint or end goal in mind. And the best way to gain that information is from talking to people that have job positions that you want in the future. So yeah, just from my experience, if you're in environmental education, a lot of fieldwork positions, unless you're pretty high up in leadership, it's going to be really hard for you to make that money back unless you go the super academic, sort of technical, scientific route. In that case, I do think a master's would help you in terms of the type of fieldwork and things you'd be doing. So it just kind of depends on the avenue you want to take. But I wouldn't encourage just jumping into a master's program kind of blind because you're not sure what step to take next. I think it's worth it to kind of take a pause if you need to as a fresh graduate and kind of figure out what you want that next step to look like first.
Awesome, thank you all. This is specifically for Candela. Do you think your GIS minor alone helped you in your current position, and would you suggest it to others?
Oh yeah, I think the GIS minor was one of the best choices I made in undergrad, on top of doing applied projects with GIS to learn it more in the field. But having taken classes to understand a lot of the equations you can use, some of the coding that you need in order to take GIS beyond just the basics of the program, was really helpful. Had to take statistics for it, which is really useful in going beyond GIS, being able to point to that as another hard skill that I had. And I also, as part of the GIS minor, at least when I did it, it was really flexible. So I was actually able to take remote sensing courses and count it towards my GIS degree. And remote sensing is another skill that you can add to your toolbox and say that you are proficient in because you have a title for it. And I would also suggest, like I said, doing internships or projects. Like if you're doing a course that you can incorporate some GIS into some project that you're doing for class or some homework, I would encourage that, because UMD has free access to GIS and they have a GIS lab in McKeldin Library. So you can go take advantage of that, take some courses and have that technical side of it. Because I did the policy and politics concentration, which by itself, unfortunately, doesn't really make you stand out because you don't have as many hard skills other than being able to write good memos, read law, all of which are important, but it doesn't really set you apart from other policy-based degrees. But having the additional technical hard skills of GIS, statistical analysis, remote sensing was helpful in diversifying the amount of programs I could, jobs I could apply to. So I would highly encourage it. I think GIS is really fun. And there's also a shift that is happening right now in the field, particularly in nonprofits and the government, where they're about like 10 years behind what academia has been using GIS for, with Python, R, and more technical coding. So if you're able to take courses in that and show up to interviews saying that you have your skills, you're also able to help that organization transition into a much more powerful tool than what they're currently using, which is just the basics of what the software offers. So I would highly encourage taking coding as well as a skill if you're interested in it.
Yeah, and just to build off of that too, when I think back to my time in undergrad and even in grad school, one thing that I wish I had done was taken more classes in GIS, because it is such a transferable skill to use. And within that sub industry, like GIS jobs also pay, like they pay pretty well. So yeah, definitely take advantage of those courses.
Great, thank you for those answers. So the next question is, do you have a memorable or favorite experience or project from your time in the workforce? So this is open to any of the speakers.
I mean, I have lots of fun sort of animal things from working at the aquarium for so many years. I mean, I was able to go on sea turtle rescue releases. So those were turtles that were under our care and in rehab because they stranded on beaches. So our animal rescue team and nursed them back to health, and I was able to help with those release trips, moving sharks to different tanks and things. So things that weren't necessarily in my job description, but just being around animal care folks and other environmental folks is a lot of fun. But I have to say my favorite project I worked on was an Atlantic white cedar tree restoration project on the eastern shore of Maryland. So over the course of my time at the aquarium, we must have planted, gosh, probably tens of thousands, Curtis, of Atlantic white cedar trees, which is a vulnerable tree species in Maryland. So being able to go back to that site and like physically see that I've helped make an impact on a species that's at risk in Maryland and helping the Chesapeake Bay is something that's really special. So.
Go. My job currently, when I started working, didn't have an environmental justice program. We had done that years prior. We had done some lawsuits around it, but in the years since, they've moved more towards voting rights. And when I was hired, I talked a lot about environmental justice and my passion for that. And they promised me that I would be able to work on that once I was hired. And I was a little bit hesitant because you can make a lot of promises during the interview process, but they were like honest, and I've been able to start this program in an organization, going out to more rural counties in North Carolina and meeting with community partners that are working on environmental justice in their community and being able to give them technical resources, legal aid, and financial assistance to make those projects a reality. And it's been really fun. Like, we had an organizing conversation at a Golden Corral at like 11 a.m. on a random Tuesday. And it was so fun to be able to sit with someone face to face and talk for like 2 hours about all the work that they've been doing and how I can help them with technical skills and the weight that the organization carries. So that was really fun and not super environmental related, but another technical thing that we've been doing is teaching people how to use an online redistricting tool that's basically mapping for political boundaries that happens with the census. And I do trainings for that for 3 hours. And it's a lot of older folks that are organizing in southern states, and seeing this like 50 to 70-year-old people that start off being really frustrated and intimidated by me talking about GIS and like data and analysis. By the end of their 3 hours, they're telling me stories about different parts of the community that they work, and they're drawing the maps themselves. So it's also really cool to be able to empower people with technical skills that they're intimidated by because they've never heard of before. By sitting with them and doing educational outreach, you can really help people be participants in this really important government step that happens once every 10 years. So that was also really fun.
I think most recently, I think an experience that stands out was having a chance to meet Secretary Deb Haaland at an event in South Baltimore at an urban wildlife refuge. So it was just very, very surreal just to get a chance to talk with her, and just someone at that leadership level that just gets it, that understands, these important intersections of conservation, of engagement, of equity, of justice, and is really working to actively dismantle some of these inequitable systems. So just really having this, great dialogue and getting a chance to engage with her there on site. And then the other one for me is really the mentoring and the supervising. So since I've started the aquarium, have had staff under me for the entirety of that time. And it's, out of all the things that I do, managing staff is the thing I'm most proud of. And it's the thing that I put so much time and energy into, seeing people come into their own, find their voice, find their power, and just soar. It's absolutely incredible and brings a smile to my face every time. So it's something as Mara mentioned earlier about mentoring, it's something it's so critical, and I invest so much time in it. And it's, for me, it's the best way to pay it forward and really say thank you to so many of the folks that did the same for me.
Awesome. Jonna, we have time for one more, right? Yeah, okay, cool. This will be kind of different than normal. What are some of the biggest common misconceptions that people have about your industry or about people working in your field? And what was something that surprised you that you were not expecting?
I would say one thing for me is, I guess this is something I didn't know while I was an undergrad until towards the end. I didn't know consulting was so big in the environmental world. Environmental consulting is a very big field, and there's so many different firms under the environmental consulting spectrum, but it is a really good opportunity. I contract with EPA, USAID, USDA sometimes, Environmental Defense Fund. We even do corporate sustainability work. So one great thing about consulting is, especially for those that were asking about grad school, you can dip your toes in so many different areas. You work on so many different projects, gaining so many different skills. And I've been thinking about grad school, and working in consulting has really, really helped, because I get to learn, okay, you know what, maybe I really like this. Maybe I don't really like this. This is something I'd like to specialize in more. So maybe I should apply to programs that are related to this. And you can really expand your network. So that's an area that wasn't really talked about much, at least when I was an undergrad, and I didn't know many people that were in that realm. So when I learned that that is a field that's possible to go into, and it's growing, and there's so many people into it. And I'll also say ESG, the environmental social governance field, that is exploding right now. There are so many jobs in it. Because it's so new, they kind of just hire everyone. So when I was applying, there was a lot of people that were also applying in ESG, and many people that you'll talk to that are in corporate sustainability work, they didn't have any prior experience in it. They didn't even have an environmental major. So having the environmental background will definitely put you at an advantage when you're applying to those types of jobs. Some of them were in finance. So yeah, ESG was something I don't think I really learned much about it in undergrad. And then once I graduated, I had learned corporate sustainability is growing so fast. So that's another field that you can go into that could really help you out.
One quick thing with technical experts is that I didn't realize just how much you're Googling as you are doing this and calling up people that have done similar work and asking them how they did it and asking for tutorials. Like I've had to teach myself how to use software like Tableau, that's a nice data visualization software, and then was able to teach it to someone else in a different organization that we partner with a lot. And that also happens with coding, like they're just Googling how to solve a problem all the time. Yes, you have the technical base and knowledge and degree to help you out with it, but at the end of the day, you're just learning as you go for all of your career, which is cool.
I guess one thing that's been surprising for me is that I always felt fieldwork had the reputation of being pretty much exclusively male dominated. And not to say that that's not partially true, but I have found, especially in the marine field, that there are quite a lot of women involved in field work. So for me, it was really helpful to have those women role models to kind of teach me the ropes of field work and have it not be so intimidating when you're starting out. Like it's a little scary sometimes to be like, oh, I'm a woman, like just straight up alone in the middle of the woods right now. So having those mentors again, or folks that are willing to teach you is crucial. And now with getting involved with prescribed fire, so that definitely was intimidating because that one for sure is still male dominated, but there's been a lot of great strides in the past several years, I feel, especially with equity and diversion things that we're made up really more sort of groups pop up where you can find like-minded folks or those sort of mentorship opportunities to help it be a little bit more comfortable, I guess, would be how I would explain it.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. If anybody has any last minute questions they'd like to drop in chat. Any last remarks?
Just wanted to say for everyone here, I think just, continuing to follow your passion and, really letting that, drive so much of what you do, because your passion is unique to you. And so really being able to center that in part of those conversations. And the other piece of advice would be, just not to get discouraged. I think that, I always think about you need one door to open. Right. And then when that door opens, you move through it and, and really take advantage of those opportunities in a really meaningful way. So I know it's hard work to, that transition, going from school to jobs but that persistence, it can really, work out for you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I believe that concludes our night. Have a great day, everyone.
If the speakers could also leave maybe their email or a means of communication for any students who want to reach out, that would be great too, I think. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to speak to us, and it was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
We will send the recording out.
Yeah, good luck to all of you as you go through your undergrad years and get close to graduation. Excited to see what you all do.
Good luck. Enjoy your last few years at UMD and get a job you like. Enjoy your life. Bye, everyone.